Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the new movie, Don't Worry Darling. Now I know there has been a lot of drama surrounding this film, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to review this movie objectively, because that's what I do. The synopsis is as follows. In the 1950s, Alice and Jack live in the idealized community of Victory, an experimental company town that houses the men who work on a top-secret project. While the husbands toil away, the wives get to enjoy the beauty, luxury, and debauchery of their seemingly perfect paradise. However, when cracks in her idyllic life begin to appear, exposing flashes of something sinister lurking below the surface, Alice can't help but question exactly what she's doing in Victory. This movie is directed by Olivia Wilde, and I believe it's the second film that she's directed. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 things that make a movie great. 1. The plot. How to best describe this plot? Pretty much we get to see a day in the life of Alice Chambers and everything is the same. She sends her husband off to work, she cleans the house, he comes home, she makes dinner. We kind of just see this recycled over and over and over again. But we start to see little flashes here and there of things that aren't quite right. And slowly over the course of the film, Alice begins to question things more and more, finding out that things aren't quite what they seem. I'm going to very quickly walk you through my mental processing that I went through after watching this movie. At first I said, wow, this movie really drug on. The last 20 minutes of the movie I thought were its better parts, and I wish they would have focused on that more. Because that's honestly a good concept behind this film. Wow. Wait. I know where I've seen that before, but I can't tell you because this is a spoiler-free review. But in a nutshell, this movie is very much another movie that most people have seen. And it would have been very, very obvious if they had focused on the last 20 minutes of the movie more and made that more of the theme of this film. But instead, Olivia Wilde tried her own twist on a more boring concept. I think that if you watch the movie Don't Worry Darling, you'll know what movie I'm talking about, because it's basically the same thing. And once I realized that, it really frustrated me, because I wanted to believe that Olivia Wilde had come up with a very unique, interesting concept, and that she hadn't just ripped it out of some other movie and added a little twist to it. A lot of times you can recycle plots and you can do stuff like that, but this is such a unique idea that it's very plain and obvious when someone's copying it. And that's exactly what this movie was. And at the end of the film, we don't even get resolution on the interesting part about this movie. The movie kind of half-heartedly sets itself up for some weird sequel that I pray will never happen, and ends with a black screen. Regardless of the ripoff that this movie was, it could have done something more interesting, and it just refused to do it. So for me, plot gets a thumbs down. 2 is family friendliness. This movie is rated R, and while there is some profanity in it, there's not a ton, and not much of anything else. The reason why this movie is rated R is for some disturbing visuals, some very brief partial nudity, but mostly it's because of these 2 very intimate sexual scenes that Olivia Wilde decided to include. But that's why this movie is rated R, which I always say is a bad idea because you limit your demographic by pushing this movie to the R rating for something as simple as 2 intimate sex scenes that don't play a part in storytelling. Throw in some sexual comments here and there, and you have yourself an R-rated movie that's not family friendly. Thumbs down. 3 is acting and script. Look, I love Florence Pugh as an actress. I think she's extremely talented. But I can't even say that she was the bright spot of this film, because that would indicate that I enjoyed this film at all. Florence Pugh did her absolute best to act with what she was given. But the script of this movie was so bad that nobody could have saved it. And that's not her fault. I can't even begin to tell you how much useless, nonsensical dialogue there is in this movie. Dialogue between characters, monologues that take place in the film. There's no logic behind them, there's no intelligence behind them. It's just a bunch of useless words. And I know what you art students in the comments might say, that was by design. And there's a lot of things that I could say. I choose to say nothing. The point is that the script of this movie is so bad that no acting performance could save it, and really the only acting performance that you really get to experience is that from Florence Pugh. Nobody else is in this movie enough for you to really get a gauge of their acting performances. Acting and script get a huge thumbs down. 4 is character development. What character development? Sure, there's a couple characters in here that you experience character progression with, mainly that being Florence Pugh. But again, nobody else is in this movie enough for you to get a firm grasp on their characters. Harry Styles is barely in this movie, and we don't get to really know his character at all, except for a series of flashbacks near the end of the film. But even then, he's as shallow as a kiddie pool. And while you get to see character progression in Florence Pugh's character, we find out barely anything about who she actually is. Because there's a difference between seeing her character progress and seeing depth of character, and there's no depth of character here. And most of all is the much anticipated antagonist of Chris Pine, who is barely in this movie. You don't get to know his character at all. He has no character depth, and because of that, he's a terrible villain. There's got to be more to a good villain than useless monologuing and creepily delivered lines. He has no depth, therefore he is a terrible villain. And it all just ends up falling pretty flat. Character development gets a thumbs down. 5 is visuals and CGI. Pretty early on in the film, when you start seeing little cracks in the reality that Florence Pugh's character is living in, I thought some of the ways that they flashed things up on screen for a split second or quickly cut away to something that was completely different than what we were seeing before, I thought that was pretty interesting and unique. The reason why I enjoyed it is because I saw it in a movie called Sunshine. I'm not saying that it didn't work in this film, because I think it did, but the reoccurring theme that I kept on realizing was I've seen this before in a different movie. But for all intents and purposes, it worked for this movie, and I have to give visuals and CGI a 50-50. 6 is rewatchability. This movie is just over 2 hours long, and like I said in plot, I was bored for most of it. Even in the final 20 minutes of this film, when it comes alive, it still doesn't bring things to fruition completely, and overall you end up with a very, very dull film. So rewatchability gets a thumbs down. With all those areas considered, I have to give Don't Worry Darling a 2 out of 10. Florence Pugh did everything she could to make this movie work. But this movie was disorienting, it was boring, it had very unnecessary sexual scenes, and everything interesting and unique that this movie had to offer was just copied from better movies. Because of the quality of this film and all of the drama surrounding it, I can see this going down as one of this year's worst movies. So with that being said, I would absolutely recommend that you do not go watch this movie in theaters. It is a waste of time and money. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen Don't Worry Darling, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.